Good evening and welcome to A Celtic World, the YouTube channel and podcast that celebrates the fact we have Celtic fans all over this big, wide world. From Cruden Bay to Botany Bay, from Govan to Guantanamo, wherever you are, you're part of A Celtic World. And it is nice to be back and talking about actual football. So before we crack into that, I'll just say a few hellos. Hello to everyone in the chat. Please join in. You'll notice Gav's still on holiday. Yeah, I think he had a brief moonlight stint on Monday because a lot of us were out of action and threw the video up on Monday, but he is overseas. He's back in the homeland. But we're hopefully... The lunatics have obviously taken over the asylum for a few weeks. But who have we got today? So we've got a few familiar faces and one that I'm just meeting today for the first time. So that's great. But we'll start with one of the regulars, David in Bangkok. How are you, mate?
Hey, Paul. Hi, folks. Yeah, looking forward to it's been a long 2 weeks. Nice to get back into, as you say, proper football on Saturday. And it's a proper time as well for us watching in Bangkok before the clocks change. So, yeah, looking forward to Saturday night. Can't beat it.
Good stuff, mate. And we'll just go around in a circle, I guess. So, Greg, I think I'm right in saying you've been on previously, but it's the first time
I've been on
the show together. Good man. So, for those that don't know you very well, just give us a quick intro and what you're looking forward to about today and the rest of the week.
Like everybody here, long-time Celtic fan. I know David from the Bangkok CSC. I know Ian online from his Gastro Celtic. And he asked me to come on here. And I said, yeah, that sounds like good fun.
Good stuff. Well, great to have you and nice to meet you.
Can I quickly ask, Greg, is that a big cup or are you small?
I'm very small.
Good man. Well, it's great to have you, Greg, and we'll look forward to your insight as we go through the show. And now another familiar face, albeit less familiar hair. We're getting used to the hair out from under the hat. Apparently a top journalist in Wales, Ian. Can you enlighten us?
Yeah, I'm just... everyone's just calling themselves a journalist now, so I'm now just a top journalist. So, that's just... I'm identifying as a top journalist, so I would appreciate if everyone... Greg's got the note to dress like Keith Jackson, so he's taking my top journalist thing seriously. So I'd just like everyone to be aware during all this and the people in the comments to appreciate that I am a top journalist. So what I say is probably, trumps everyone's opinion. Everyone's opinion is below mine because I am a top journalist. And who's calling me a top journalist? Me. So in my world, you can't disagree with that. So I'm a top journalist. Thank you.
Well, some of the people calling themselves a top journalist are far from it, Ian. So maybe we'll hear some of your wilder comments and thoughts today. Let's just jump in the comments. We've got Monty in, as always, from a wet and dreich Fife. We've got Brown Warrior from a slightly overcast Lancashire. It's a fucking heat wave here again. It's not to rub it in. It's bloody 36 again here. So unseasonably hot for autumn. We've got Plunge McNugget, morning dudes and dolls, and Smell of greetings from warm and sunny Scottish Riviera of Ayr. Would you believe it? And Ricky Moynihan, morning boys. Ian, chuck a jacket over that Kyogo likeness. It's making me sad. Well, we'll get onto this later, but there's some news filtering around from less than top journalists, to be fair, that we might have something to celebrate from a compatriot of Kyogo's. But we will crack on. Let's let you know what we're covering today. It's not massively a surprise. We're going to touch briefly, looking backwards, on what's been a bloody long fortnight since the derby. We will then talk about, in a lot of detail, on points 2 and 3, a warm welcome for Hearts and a player focus in relation to that game. And then revolution, or just plain revolting. You can guess what that might be touching on. We will have a quick glance across the other side of the city before we're done, if we've got time. And I think we will, because essentially we've got nearly an hour's worth of Hearts discussion.
Before you dive in, can I just have a slight aside, because I've got you said it's been a long 2 weeks. My weeks was punctuated. I think I've told the story before, but my best man at my wedding and one of my best friends is a Rangers fan. Make of that, what you will. He has not, for the past however long I've been on this show, ever noticed that I've been on the show or had any clip. However, I got a message from him, and I'm going to filter out some of the bits and pieces. But he would like me to say to David that he hoped you enjoyed your 19 points clear party at the Bangkok CSC. And I said, "What?" I said, so I said, "What are you?" Said what you told me. He said that you're on some sort of podcast that's come up. So apparently we've been doing the rounds on the WhatsApp of the group chats of that, and just he wanted me to say about that 19 points. I said he's probably disappointed by that, but the treble party at the end of the season will probably make up for the disappointment.
Indeed. Definitely. I would say that's fair. Well, look, I'm surprised they're even peeping out of their hole. It's taken long enough, but we've got to take one or two on the chin. We're still well ahead. And I guess I've punctuated the long 2 weeks with, well, straight out the bat of it, Paddy's Day kneecap gig on the same night. That was quite a way to get over a derby defeat, installing a brand new hangover. And getting a live gig by West Belfast's finest. So yeah, that was a good way to start, and it's been a slog since then. Has anyone bothered to follow the international football?
No,
particularly. No.
I heard a stat that 30% of people that support a club watch their national team or actively support their national team. So 30% will watch them live or whatever. So that shows the sort of 3 in 10 football fans will do it. And I think maybe even, I don't know, I would maybe say the Irish diaspora of the support their team a little bit more, given our group chat seems like Gav and everyone are quite interested in that. But when it comes to Scotland, it's almost radio silence at the moment.
Yeah, I think,
the Euros killed it off. The tactics were so dull from Mr. Clark that it was painful.
Well, that's the thing. I think I like following the Scotland team, but I'll be honest, I'm a bit of a fair weather fan. If it's, we're pretty lucky. We get to watch decent football most of the time as Celtic fans. So when to try and flip the switch and celebrate, the low block and hanging in, it's a difficult one to get on board with. Yeah, results can be worth it, but it was a good result in Greece, but it very quickly turned to a shocker in Scotland, and I don't know where you go from here, to be honest, but it's a poor watch. I watched the last 35 minutes of the first game. I just happened to be up at that time in the morning, and I stuck it on while I was in the gym, and it was just backs to the wall by that point. I think the first half performance has been half decent, although the penalty seemed to be very soft. And then I wasn't. I saw the score. By the time I got up, it just turned 2-0 or maybe just gone 3-0, and I was like, well, it's not worth turning that on. So yeah, no. But there were some of our players involved in the international scene. Some meaningful stories. I think Adamida had a chat to his international manager because he was left on the bench in the first game, and then he came off the bench and scored the winner, and was basically quoted as saying that he feels super confident in his goal scoring since he joined Celtic, and working under Brendan-Rodgers has filled him back full of confidence and given him his love for the game back, which I thought was pretty strong language, obviously, for him to be speaking like that. But so that was decent. Did you anyone spot the CCV AJ near square up / giggle? Anyone want to talk on that?
Can I just talk first about Ida? I don't think he really covered himself in. I don't think he really covered himself in glory with doing the sort of ear up to the crowd, and sort of like people had been whinging at him online, and I think there was a lot of people that were saying, well, look, mate, if you're so worried about your performances and what other people think about you, then maybe instead of watching what people think of you in Google, spend maybe a wee bit more time practicing your first touch. So I think it was I think it was a good goal, etc. But I think his behaviour wasn't ideal for that. But on your question, I thought AJ and CCV, when AJ just kind of laughed at him and pushed him a wee bit and chill out, big man, was quite funny.
Yeah, look, it was, and that was all I was really getting at with that one. I think I'm going to stick up for Ida here. I think players take an absolute mountain of abuse online, and in this kind of environment, with everybody having the whole internet in their pocket, it must be super hard not to try and block that out and not see some of it. So I've got a bit of sympathy for players that when they get a bit of stick and they respond in kind. I don't think it's I think there's nothing wrong with that. It shows a bit of desire and a bit of dig to turn prove your doubters wrong. So yeah, fair play to him. We will come on to the other major story of for Celtic players in the international break when we do our player focus a little bit later on. But let's just touch on briefly what we said we would do at the top of the show is it's been a long 2 weeks. Time for some perspective. Ian, 2 weeks on from the result, was there a massive overreaction? How do you feel about that defeat 2 weeks down the line?
So I would say no, there wasn't a massive overreaction. Let me prefix this by saying, and I think people will know, I have a different way of dealing with stuff and processing and stuff like that is not like kind of atypical, and it's just born out of like I said, I was in a bad job and I had a bad manager, and I learned how to kind of leave all that at the door and all the rest of it. And I kind of take that now into supporting Celtic, and I've leaned heavily on it over the last 2 derby games. I think the problem is, and the reason that the reaction was correct, was we were told after the derby game at Ibrox and in the lead up to this one that lessons had been learned. We were going to show this, we were going to show that, and stuff like that. And whilst the performance was better, how could it not be? Lessons weren't learned. And I know people will point to different players should have been booked, VAR, different moments in the game and stuff. At the end of the day, it's still 2 losses in a row to a team that is, in terms of quality and in terms of value, significantly worse off than us. They were just well organised and probably wanted it more. And especially after going 120 minutes a couple of days before. So everything on there, it wasn't acceptable. It wasn't acceptable. My thing is more, I don't really see the point in losing the heat, as a lot of folk have done. I've gone absolutely tonto. I think losing the heat, I would reserve for the stuff with the police and the fans, because I think that's more something to be genuinely angry about. I think the other thing in terms of the performance of the team, you just got to leave that to Rodgers and the players. They've got sorted. They're the only ones. There's no amount of huffing and puffing from us that's going to change that. They need to feel that. If people are out and about and see them, I would never abuse the players, but I would definitely have a word with them and kind of say, look, guys, you got to get it together, because you're 13 points clear. That's great. It's fantastic, on course, hopefully for a treble, etc. But at the end of the day, we need to kind of keep that dominance, and it's an attitude thing. And I think maybe there's a little bit of the attitude. So it's a mix of things. So no, not an overreaction for me, but I think we draw a line under it. We move on. We don't let it affect the rest of the season. That's it.
Yeah. Now, I tend to agree with you for the most part. I think I kind of found it like, especially when I watched the game back, like sober next day, obviously knowing where we end up. I will see a lot of people complaining about tactics, and I think you're right. Attitudinally, it was a problem more than tactically. I think half the team didn't play well. Like at least 5 players played either poorly or very poorly. And you can't have half a team go missing in a derby and expect to still get a result. And to be honest, half a team went missing in a derby, and we probably still should have got a draw at least and more likely to win. That just a shambles for the third. All the goals were really poor loss, but the third one, for CCV to miss the header from a big punt up the field completely, and then AJ to fall on his backside and then get a chance to recover and still not clear it properly.
But see, that is an accident. Not replacing Kyogo is not an accident. So, but the time for that is not now to lose it. It's in the summer, because that needs to be one of the things that Rodgers presents back to the board and says, well, look, we go into that derby game with Ida out of form. We're having to play Maeda as the striker. All these things.
Absolutely. Greg, how are you feeling? We're 2 weeks down the track. Are you hanging about, thinking about the derby in any way, or are you really looking forward towards getting back into business against Hearts at home on Saturday?
No, I'm not worried about the derby at all. We were told before the derby it doesn't matter. Brendan Rodgers told us he was going to put Ferguson in his place. We all know it was a total farce, but we're still 13 points in the lead. The league's still coming, so we move on. I just think it's the second derby in a row. Rodgers has failed to react with his tactics. Okay, it's a big loss missing Callum McGregor because he is the engine of the team, but he needs to be more tactically aware and get the team set up correctly. I mean, again, how many times have people come on here? How many times have people in the chat said, oh, there's a surprise. It's gone long. It's gone to the left back. This time it was Schlupp, and they just put the pressure on, and we just seem to have no plan for it. And that, for me, is 100% on the manager.
Yeah, this thing, Brown Warrior. Yeah, you're spot on. Brown Warrior makes a good point here in terms of a bit more variety in approach. Either get better gilt edge chances, better crossing instead of cutting in all the time. I think it's valid, right? When we got to the byline and get balls in and across and pull back, the chances come. It's one of my grumbles from earlier in the season when Kyogo was still with us, whether it was Kyogo or Ida, you'd have those players and just in space begging for opportunities, and the service system was limited and poor when it came. I thought we played pretty attractive stuff at times in that game, but not often enough, and too many individuals miles off it and making major individual errors that led to goals, which you wouldn't accept it from a schoolboy team, and there's no way we should accept it from that team. And I go back to Ian's original point. I think too many players thought they were able to take their foot off the gas a bit, or they've seen results that team had against much poorer sides than us and thought turning up was enough. And that's not on. And that's on them, but it's also on the gaffer. He sets the tone. And yeah, 3 poor performances in a row against them. That was probably, even though we won the cup final on penalties, that was probably the best of the 3 of them. And that says a lot because it was pretty poor at times. And there were too many players miles off it. Anyway, let's move on. We're looking ahead to Hearts. We've got a chance to put things right. David, I'll come to you first. Do you think this is a good game to get this one out of the system, or is this another potential banana skin? How are you feeling about it?
I always feel confident about the games before we start. I would have preferred.
Hence the 19-point party.
Just 2 words to your friend Ian, Queen's Park. So I'll take 13 points instead of 19 and still being in the cup, not having been thrashed and humiliated by Queen's Park.
I'll pass it on.
I'm sure he's watching. I'm sure he's watching now that he knows that he's an internet legend now. So I would have liked to have had been at home to St Johnstone this weekend instead of being at home to Hearts. I think they have the capacity to certainly to stick the boot in to give us more of a game than we're likely to get from St Johnstone. I think also the fact that a lot of our key players have been travelling halfway around the world over the last few days. So I still think we'll have far too much for them, but probably it won't be as easy as I would have liked.
Greg, what are you thinking ahead of Hearts? Is this
I'm
a good
one?
To a big game? Is it one that we we'll rise to the occasion and put the previous mess behind us?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's good to be back at Paradise, and it simply must win. Not only the result, but also the attitude of the players and of the manager. He completely lost the plot. Why was he bigging it up? And then his team wasn't ready before the most important game of the season. I just don't understand it. But I think we'll beat Hearts. The only worry is obviously Schmeichel. He's going to be out. Sinazalo did okay in the cup, but I'm not sure he's had any other chance to show what he can do. So I think we'll get 3 points.
Cool. Thank you for that. Ian, are you thinking along similar lines to the guys, or have you got any concerns that this could be a tough one for us?
No, I mean, you don't really know. I still maintain, I think from now to the end of the season, complacency is our enemy. That's what I've learned from the Derby game. It's complacency is our biggest obstacle. I don't think anyone can argue in terms of the superiority of our squad. I know some people will say our squad depth isn't the best, but compared to everyone else in the league, it is. And I think it is complacency now. I think the most you can ask for after like this sort of international break, etc., is to have a home game. So I think that's kind of box ticked. I think if there's going to be any sort of like fatigue and stuff like that, it's better to have at home versus away. I think, yes, Hearts will be organised and will pose a difficult challenge, but we should have more than enough. I think it's just a case of, you alluded to it, Paul, in the last Derby game, there's a couple of people really off form, and I don't want to single out players, but I would say someone like Nicholas Kuhn has had, since Bayern Munich has been checked out, and we really need him to kind of step up because, we can't afford passengers in this run-in now, and we can't just always rely on Diaz and Maeda and Jota to do stuff. Kuhn needs to step up again. So there's a couple of players in that boat, but I think when it comes to us, we always focus on the attacking players because that's what we do. We score goals, and if that one doesn't function, then we're always liable. We're always shaky in the defence. So I would say complacency is the enemy we need to fight until the end of the season. I would hope we would get 3 points. And to be honest with you, dropping points is probably, there's a mini meltdown bubbling, and that's funny to say. At 13 points clear, on course for a treble, but you can feel it. You can kind of feel it, and like I said, it's partly performances, it's partly the derby, and I think it's also partly there's unease within the fans with the police stuff as well. So I think there's something brewing. So I think it'd be best if we could just get the 3 points and carry on.
Yeah, I agree. We've got Frank Kennedy coming in here. All that matters now is the result. 3 points for play well. That's a bonus. Brown Warrior pretty much disagreeing to some degree, saying we need a performance. The last few showings, there's been a drop off in quality. It's been noticeable. We made Rangers look like a quality side. And yeah, John Coyle is also looking for a performance, abysmal display against Sevco. I'm, to be honest, I'm in the camp. We should be getting a performance, but at this stage of the season, especially as you say, players coming back after long haul trips, Hearts have had, some of their players will have been away. The few Australians and stuff. James Wilson, obviously in the Scotland squad, but they'll have had more time. With more of those players to work on the training ground. A performance would be great, but a result is kind of the be all and end all, I would say. I was just wanting, I haven't got this to show up on screen, but because Gav's not here and I'm not as organised as he is, I don't know what he gets up to and how much time he invests in this, but I've got a job and a family as well. So I haven't been producing all the media that he is usually got. So unfortunately, just going to look at us and listen to our chat. But the form table for the last 6 games, does anyone want to have a stab who's top of the form table for the last 6 matches in Scotland?
Hibs.
It is Hibs, yeah. Hibs 14 points in the last 6. And then do you want to have a stab at 2, 3, and 4?
Are Dundee there?
Nah, they've dropped off. In fact, they're 12th. Their form's dropped off a cliff. Yeah. I think their only result is pretty much the one against United. So we're second in the form table, 12 out of the last 6. Best goal difference, obviously 14 plus. Then Hearts +8 goal difference, same points, 12 out of the last 6, and Rangers 12 out of the last 6, but a worse goal difference than either Hearts or Celtic. So obviously, other than the Highbees and ourselves, the form team, I'll be honest, I don't have too many concerns. They do like to have a bit of a kick, probably more injuries is probably my biggest concern. But at Celtic Park, 3 o'clock kickoff. David's saying it's a great kickoff time. It's still 11 p.m. for me, not ideal. But yeah, it's I expect us to go out and put them to the sword. Maybe as usual at home, if it goes the first half hour and it's tight or it's 0-0, then it does give them something to maybe have a crack at. But if we can score early, then usual story, we could put a few past. Anyone want to chip in on anything on the sort of broader game picture before we start sort of chatting about individual players? No?
Well, I think you mentioned that Kuhn wasn't very good since the Bayern game, but ever since he came back from injury, there's none of this magic between him and Johnston. I know Johnston also got injured, but as Ian said, he needs to step up his game. Otherwise, he needs to get dropped. I think Brendan has to be a lot more ruthless, and when people aren't playing well, just put them out the team. I'm sorry, we can't have people just thinking that the performance against Rangers was acceptable for the second time. Okay, Kalmuck wasn't there. I thought Engels was trying to drive the team on, but it's not just on one person. I'd like to see a lot more from CCV getting the back line organised. And also the distribution of the ball always seems to either go to CCV and then to Johnston and then to Kuhn, or maybe CCV and then to whoever's playing in the Kalmack position. There's no variety. I think the tactics needs changed up, and I think the players need to wake up. But I still think we've got more than enough to win the league. But really, we shouldn't be in this situation.
Yeah. It's a really good pickup, Greg, and I agree with you wholeheartedly on this. And when I watched the game back, obviously the next day with clarity and not 6-8 pints, however many I'd had when I watched the game the night before in the pub with the CSC, one of the things that the stark thing that I noticed, particularly given how much grief and heat Engels has got, and I can only imagine that heat is coming because, one, he's not Kalmack, and two, he's got an 11 million price tag around his neck, because it wasn't based on his performance. In the second half, he was constantly making himself available predominantly for CCV because he was the player with the ball. He was starting higher up the pitch than Cal does. Cal basically comes right onto his toes and says, I'll take it off you, don't worry about it. Engels is sitting 8 to 10 yards higher up the pitch, even 5 to 10 yards higher up the pitch, making an angle and asking for a forward pass so that he can then step on and move forward. And CCV was reluctant to play that pass. It wasn't a difficult pass. It wasn't asking it to thread it between the eye of a needle between players putting pressure on him. It was literally just asking to play a forward pass at a slight angle into Engels so that he's already on the half turn and can get forward with his head up. And there was one point early to mid in the first half, Engels was screaming at him to bring it in, to play it into him, to play it forward. And he was standing on the ball, knocking it square, looking for AJ, looking for his centre-back partner. And it was super frustrating to see that that's what was happening. One, given Engels is open, and two, given the fact that the narrative by that point that was Engels had a terrible game. He was the one trying to put a rocket up that back four in terms of getting the ball into him quickly so he can then drive the team forward. We looked better when Hatate dropped in next to Engels because then that gave them another option to pass it to. And to be honest, Hatate went even deeper. I think Engels was reluctant to go deep because he wanted to hold his position, because he knew if he could get the ball in the half-turn higher up the pitch, he could get forward more quickly, and that was the key to breaking the lines. It's a really good point you made, Greg, and I thought it was super frustrating. And you could see Engels gradually getting more and more frustrated until him and Hatate sort of got the thing moving mid-second half. And that's where really the real balance of power started to swing. And but for a long punt and a bit of luck, you could only really see us going on and winning it. So yeah, I think if we miss Kalmack for anything, I don't necessarily do think it was his actual playing contribution. It was his leadership and his willingness to take the ball as deep as he does, and therefore give the defense the comfort that they can have it simple as. So yeah, I definitely think we need to try and move teams around a bit. I think we need to try and draw teams out and get the ball over the top a bit more quickly and use the wings. We've got pace to burn. But yeah, we've definitely got some issues in terms of our distribution from the back and our unwillingness to try and play more forward passes.
I mean, it was almost going back to when we had Aya in defence. It was always him who brought the ball out, and then people would just say, "Okay, so we'll just wait for the other centre back to have the ball because we know he's going to pass it to us because he can't do anything." And if I'm not mistaken, CCV's captained the team, Johnston's captained the team. So since Cal Mack's out, these people need to step up and drive it forward. I thought Engels in the second half was awesome. As you said, he had his conflab with Hitate. They really got things going. He laid into Schlupp at one point because Schlupp was being so slow. He was telling him to take the free kicks, the throw-ins faster, keep the ball in play. There was a crazy stat of where the ball was only in play for 48 minutes, over 90 minutes of that game. And we're the home team. We've also got, was it 400 ball boys? We've got 29 balls. The full multi-ball should have been in effect. But no, we only played 48 minutes of the ball on the pitch. And I want to see that intensity against Hearts. I think we'll get it. And then, of course, after the Hearts game, I'll be disappointed we didn't bring it to the Rangers game.
Ian, obviously, a few players really didn't perform in that last game. We've touched on Kuhn. We've touched on Schlupp there. CCV and AJ were other big performers that were well off on the day. Would you be dropping any of them? Or do you think that's a bit much and really haven't got the depth to do that?
I got to be honest. It kind of goes back to my thing. I was having a chuckle to myself there because I can see you two guys still harboring some resentment from that result just bubbling up. Again, this is as Greg said, this is a Rodgers tactic thing. He needs to be a bit more ruthless. Kuhn is an easy one to drop for Yang because Yang was good. Yang is good. It's an easy one to do. He needs to do more of it. And I understand he's got a balance. He's got a balance, like keeping the players happy and not throwing people under the bus and stuff like that. But there also needs to be a pattern of accountability. And maybe this is the right time to do it. Maybe it's not. So I don't, because the thing is, it's not like last season where there was people clearly who were terrible and who weren't able to pass like 3 or 4 yards. This time last season, we had guys that couldn't pass to a Celtic player and people wildly out of form. It's nowhere near as bad as that. Like I said, it's more about complacency. It's more about effort, work rate, attitude and stuff like that. So I think it's actually more of a difficult problem for Rodgers to solve. But ultimately, that's why I think it is a Rodgers 1-2 solve. I don't think it's a case of dropping a few. I think it's a case of it's a real structural attitude thing. And maybe that involves dropping a couple of players. Maybe it involves sticking with them. Maybe it involves tactical shifts. I can't put my foot on it because it's not as clear and obvious as it was like last season. And we've got a bit of a cushion. So, yeah, a long way of saying I don't know who I'd bring out. The most obvious one for me is to bring in Yang. But outside of that, I'm not really sure there's too much. If Bernardo was there, I'd definitely be saying get Bernardo in that midfield just to see how he could do. But I don't think he'll be back.
No, I think he's still a little bit away. We might see James Forrest back in the squad. You think he was getting pretty close, so that adds, I guess, pressure to the wing positions if he is back. You're not necessarily going to expect him to start, but he still had a contribution to play in the first half of this season and last season before the injury just around the cup final. I kind of tend to agree with you. I don't think there's really the depth there. We saw there was lack of depth in the derby, right? The majority of the bench didn't get used, and it was youngish kids. My view on that though is if they're good enough to be on the bench, if you back them to be on the bench, and players are honking, get them on. Like, what's the worst that can happen? I think
it's different in the derby though. It's different in the derby because I think it's a case of if you have a youngster that comes on and does not perform as well, and the team's not performing, that person is written off by a large section of our support forever, and that's just clear. We sign a player and they make like a mistake in their first game, and then it's they've got that in them and stuff like this. So I think the derby I can be slightly forgiven. I take it on board and I take the sentiment, but I do think we have to be realistic with that fixture our support, and then the pressure that can then kind of build. And I think that's why Nawrocki came in instead of Dane Murray, because they obviously want Dane Murray to do well. And I think, like, if he makes a mistake in that, he's as good as gone for a large section.
Yeah, no, that's a valid point. But certainly from here on out, I would, if there's kids on that bench, I want, and there's players in that kid's position that isn't at the level, I want the kid on the pitch, because how else are you going to find out if they've got it in them other than to get them on the pitch and see if they can contribute? And if some of the established players are cruising it and think they can just phone it in for the rest of the season, well, let a kid that's got a bit of hunger and might want a jersey have a crack and see where we land up. So I'm all for that, but I take the point. The derby's a different beast. But the other side of that is they're rubbish, right? Like they're getting beaten by Queen's Park, they're getting beaten by Motherwell, etc. So we give them too much respect. Kind of
but Paul, we are like almost beating Bayern Munich in the Bayer Arena. It's because we've raised our game for Bayern Munich. They've raised their game for the big dog.
The big
Do you know
dogs.
what I mean? That's what it is. Do you know what I mean? They've raised their game against the team that's 16 points ahead in the biggest rival. That's the disappointing thing. So it's like I know we shouldn't get beaten, but it does. All roads lead back to complacency and effort and things like that. And we can find parallels in terms of our performance against a Bayern Munich this season. And I do think it's, you're right, it is that sort of a gap. Like financially and quality wise, it is that sort of a gap between us and Rangers. And I know they'll point to, there's some international call-up war going on. They can do that all the time. But look, we've got players that have got trebles and trophies. They're having to buy like another house to store all the accolades. Do you know what I mean? So it's application, it's effort, it's complacency, it's all the above.
Well, I think Ian, unfortunately, he's got his journalist hat on and he's got selective memory, because I remember he put out a tweet before the game. If Ian would just like to remind us what he said.
Yeah, he said it'd be embarrassing if he lost to them.
Yeah, and he said he should go. And what happened? He completely and utterly failed. It's not the first time. It's the second time. This is 100% on the manager.
Hold on, you said I said Brendanrodgers should go.
Correct. I put out a tweet.
No, I think
I put out a poll. Didn't I? Remember, everybody got super upset by it and said, "Oh, look, there he is. He's the Hun." It all starts with the manager. The manager starts the tone.
Hold on. I'm being libeled here. No way did I say Brendanrodgers should go. This is what happens to top journalists. You see, this is exactly what it is. Just because I'm a top journalist, people twist my words. No, I said it would be embarrassing, 100%, and it is embarrassing. Rodgers should not go. I'm being libelled by
Go back to covering the rugby. Don't worry about it.
Fun and games. Well, I don't think anyone really thinks Rodgers should go, but he's definitely got to get a turnaround in attitude and form and performance and result. Because we've all been stewing for 2 weeks and waiting for the big game. And now it's nearly here. And I'm a wee bit frustrated that we haven't got the opportunity. There probably isn't the opportunity to make more changes than we will probably see. It's a good time to touch on the goalkeeping position. Schmeichel, as a couple of people have mentioned in the comments, had an absolute shocker. I didn't mention him in the 4 previous players, but he was absolutely one of the players who was a mile off it. In terms of definitely his first half performance, his distribution was all over the place. Directly responsible, in my view, for the second goal in terms of kicking the ball straight out of play instead of actually not kicking it straight out of play, dropping it in between players and enforcing it being kicked out for play and then them recycling it from there. Obviously, he wouldn't have got dropped, but for an injury. Are we concerned? 1, about the injury, and 2, about how long he's going to be out, and then 3, Sinisalo coming in. David?
So there's a couple of things with this one, right? I think if you're wanting to have that sort of change, being 13 points clear in the league is the best time to do it. So that's a bonus. Okay, so that's a positive way to look at it. The other positive way to look at it is we've probably got about 15 games left if we go the full distance. That's more than enough time to see if our backup goalkeeper has it or if we need to make a replacement in the summer. So those are I'll just start with the positivity. David, if you want to go down the negative route, but for me, those are the positives of this situation.
Well, thank you, Ian. You're not only a top journalist, you're a top mimic and impersonator, to take all my words there. So thank you very much for that. No, I think the timing of it, as you say, is not bad. I mean, if he'd broken his arm or something the week before the Champions League playoffs, and in 4 months' time, then we'd be a bit more concerned. I think it's an opportunity for Sinisalo to show what he's got. I'd be very worried if Rodgers, for any reason, was to choose Bain. I think that would be quite a statement, but I don't see that. I know that.
Please don't even put that into. Don't even put that out there.
Yep. So you heard it here first, lads. So that could be one of your top journalistic scoops, Ian. No, I think it's the timing of it's not so bad. Clearly, he had a poor game against the Huns. I saw in some of the comments in the chat that people are saying he was terrible against Portugal. He did save a penalty against Ronaldo, so in my book, that's always a positive to shut him up. So let's see how it goes with Sinisalo, and take it from there. Yep.
Yeah.
Can I just say, as a top journalist, I have read the Danish report that Schmeichel will be out until after the summer. Now, I know you may have read the same report, but I'm just saying as a top journalist, I've read it, and I'm just communicating this as new news because no one has brought it up, and that's what we top journalists do. So just because no one's mentioned it, so now it's new information that I'm introducing.
Okay, well then I'll go on the quote, and what the doctor said is, all we know is he's injured. We don't actually know how long he's going to be out for. So obviously I'm not a top journalist and I'm basing it on fact.
But that's the difference there. You're just basing it on fact.
Okay.
I'm just introducing wild speculation. And that's really what you have to do as a top journalist now. And, you'd be wise to take that on board because you're concentrating on fact.
Taking off Keith Jackson's fashion advice. I'll keep getting more and more up to date with top journalists like yourself.
Thank you.
I'm not sure I like this top journalist persona that you've decided to bring to the team today. It's not your usual high quality content, Ian.
It's above that now, Paul, yeah. because essentially just by saying that I'm a top journalist, I've just elevated it. And actually, for the podcast in general, to have a top journalist on, yeah. I mean, wow.
Full of it, honestly. I think there's some good point. You're right. It is, if there's a time to bring in your backup goalkeeper who's completely untested at this level, effectively, I think it's going to be his competitive debut, even, is it not? Or a league debut?
League debut. Yeah,
league debut. Yeah.
It's 10. You said 15, Ian. Potentially maximum 10 games. There's 8 games left in the league, and obviously 2 in the cup potentially if we can get through the semi and onto the final. If Schmeichel is going to be injured for a period, I wouldn't be rushing him back. To the point we've got qualifiers early in pre-season. I
would be relying on him to come back, Paul. If this is one that is going to go into a significant portion of next season, I got to say, as good as he's been, I'm not saying like we ditch him and we kind of throw him in the trash heap, but I think we got to be sensible. We've got the money in the bank.
Yeah, you'd buy another keeper.
Salad isn't the one. I think we need to go into the transfer market because I just don't think we can take the risk.
I think even if after the 10 games or 9 or 10 games, whatever it ends up being of this season, if he plays them all, even if you decide he is an able deputy, if Schmeichel really is and again we're in speculation territory here, but if Schmeichel is a month, 2, 3 months into next season before he's back, you've got to go. You can't rely on Bain being your backup. You've got to go and buy another goalkeeper. So you either go and buy somebody that leapfrogs Sinisalo, and he's still your backup, and effectively will compete with Schmeichel, and Schmeichel might not get back in when he comes back from injury, or you buy a similar type of goalkeeper to Sinisalo, and you let them duke it out once for the spot, either ongoing or until Schmeichel comes back and then beyond. Because Schmeichel's really only he signed the extension. He's only going to have next season, assuming he's fit. So we're still going to need a goalkeeper longer term. Now, I wouldn't be surprised to see us, and we're veering slightly off topic here, but we've got the time, so I'll cover it. I wouldn't be surprised if we take a similar route on the goalkeeper position that we've done with Joe Hart and now Kasper Schmeichel, and pick another extremely experienced international goalkeeper that's deep into their mid to late 30s and do the same again, another 1, 2, 3 year deal, because it's worked, right? And both those guys are now out there talking about how amazing it is to play for Celtic and the atmosphere and all of that. So if there's other international goalkeepers 35 plus not thinking, ooh, that might be a good place for me to go for a 2 or 3 seasons before I wind up, I'd be extremely surprised. So I think that might be the strategy. So even if Sinisalo has 8-10 games that are excellent, he still might not be the first choice keeper beyond Schmeichel's reign. But it's nice. It'd be nice. We were excited by the prospect of signing a young up and coming goalie to learn under Schmeichel. Well, here's a chance for him to test his mettle and hope. Like it's a tough gig at Celtic in goals, because you're really only going to be needed once or twice a game for the most part, unless somebody has a total shocker. So it's not only just being a good keeper, you need to be able to pull it out when it really matters, and that might only be once a game. Okay, we've spent a fair amount of time on the playing group. Let's just...
Can I just, because I think Brown Warriors asked if people know like the quality of Sinisalo in terms of he's good with his feet and distribution and things like that. I don't think any of us know, do we? I know that he had like a really good loan period. He got, I think it was 40 or so games in League One in England and stuff like that. But this is the it's kind of your thing, Paul, about like youngsters not getting it. We haven't really rotated the keeper, so I don't think any of us actually know what he's like. We know he's Finnish. He is Finnish, isn't he? Yeah.
He's not Finnish. He's only like 21.
Only 27, yeah.
I think that's what top journalists do. He set that up. But yeah, I don't know if he's comfortable with the ball at his feet. Did anyone watch the highlights and stuff when he came or anything? Or
no, but we saw him play, didn't we, in the cup?
I've got a complete memory blank there. Was he good with his feet, Greg?
He was okay. He's obviously very young and he was very nervous. But this comes back to Paul's point. If people aren't playing good enough, get them out the team. Ian, you said if Kun's not playing well, get Yang in. Well, when we're 4-0 up with 40 minutes gone, then you need to bring on the subs. And Rodgers is so slow at this, yeah? And it's the same set of players who come on. So we go 3 or 4 up, on comes Bernardo. But where are the young kids? Where was Dane Murray getting a chance? He was out on loan. Welsh had obviously had enough waiting on the bench and said, I'm off. Dane Murray comes back in. Oh no, panic stations. He gets dropped into Villa Park and he's not had a game. The manager obviously didn't want to put him in against Rangers. That's fair enough. But these players need time. And people will say, oh, if they're good enough, they'll get time. But it's up to the manager to actually give them time. Nobody knew Kieran Tierney was going to be a superstar in the making until he had to play a few games due to injury. So Rodgers needs to take this on. If you're Kenny and you're watching Ida not hit a barn door, you're thinking, why did I come back from Ireland, give up playing in Europe, and I can't even get on the pitch? Give me a chance.
Agree.
Absolutely spot on. Well, let's just go and have a quick chat about overall team. Do we think it's going to be a pretty similar team to what most of us think is the strongest side with the swap of the keeper? Do we think Trusty's going to be back? It sounded like he might be. Do we have any quick thoughts on team lineup? David?
Yeah, I think I would keep it as their inferior strongest lineup. I think it depends a lot on if McGregor's fit. I think if he's fit, it kind of that I think that helps a lot. in terms of the stability for the midfield. But I would say that the rest of the team pretty much picks itself. I would keep if Trusty's fit, he comes straight back in. CCV, for all of these players, they've been traveling all over the place the last couple of weeks. Strongest team against Hearts, no messing about. It's not the time to start with, and I would give Kuhn another chance. He's not been traveling halfway around the world the last 2 weeks. He probably, if Ida listens to what people are saying about him online, I'd imagine Kuhn would be the same. So I'd see this as an opportunity for him to bring his A game against Diet Hans.
Yeah, I think there's
a nail on the head there, because you said there's nobody to come in. You said you pick the strongest team and we know who it is. Is that not the problem, Ian?
No, I think there's opportunities for different stuff. So I think now, because Maeda has been, away over in Asia, so I think Anida's scored a goal. So I think there's a good opportunity here to play Ida, and maybe give Maeda just that little bit extra of a rest and keep Jota, because Jota hasn't been away, Kuhn hasn't been away. I think Maeda. So I think there's a couple with the travel requirements that might get the rest. But yeah, we got to start to look at some of this. Again, I know, he's going to pick Kuhn. He is going to pick Kuhn. But I do think there's a solid argument to say that Yang could maybe be getting the nod. But I think there's a difference, right? There's a difference between what we all think he should do and maybe start to do and try and do, and what we kind of know he's going to do. So, yeah, let's see.
So Mark Nisbet chipping in saying, yeah, he'd like to see Ida up top, Maeda and Jota on the wings. That would obviously mean standing Kuhn down, which we've got different views on that, but it wouldn't be outside of the possibilities given his last performance. But I tend to agree with the guys. I think he will get a chance to rectify it. But yeah, obviously we've got that option to let Ida play through the middle and put those guys on the wings. Whether we start with that or finish with that, you'll definitely see that at some point. We're coming up close on the hour. Let's quickly do predictions, since we've been so on point with those in recent weeks. Can't remember how much I said we would beat the Huns by, but I was off the mark.
I do have a quick question. Would you have changed your prediction pool as soon as you knew Cal Mack was out?
I'd probably dialed it down from the 3 or 4 goals to the odd goal. But I stand by the fact, and especially having watched it back the next day, that team was more than good enough if everybody played to their even close to their capability. You can't have 5 guys drop performance well below the expectation level, and you can't have another 1 or 2 being a bit off it as well. Like literally, you could probably get 2 or 3 players with pass marks and another 1 or 2 that were sort of maybe getting there. So yeah, I think it was less about the lineup, and to be honest, the player that gave me the most cause for concern in the lineup wasn't Engels dropping in for Kalmak, because we know he can play that position and he's done so well when he's been asked to do it for parts of games when Carl's been pulled early to give his injury a bit of a rest. It was Nawrocki playing at the centre back position, and to be honest, out of the back 5, he's the only one that got pass marks. That's and there you go, right? If you're back 5, only one of the back 5 gets pass marks. How can you expect to win a major game? Like it's pretty unlikely you're going to do that.
Quickly in that Kalmak one, I actually don't think that Kalmak is that big a miss in terms of if Engels goes in there. I think where the Kalmak thing is he's a comfort blanket for a number of the team, and I think that's more what it is. I think Engels can more do the job, but as you pointed out earlier, Engels is like got that kind of youthful technical ability that he's moving a bit further up and saying, CCV, just give me a pass that's a bit forward. And CCV's used to Kalmak coming and going, oh, no, hold on, I'll come right close to you, give me that ball, I'll give it over to Trusty for you, I'll do it. And I think that's what it is. So I think it's more the comfort blanket of Kalmak as opposed to the Engels coming in for Kalmak. So I think if Kalmak isn't 100%, I think we need to play Ingles there again so that people actually get used to it, because the quality drop-off is not as big as I think people would assume, but the comfort factor is. And I think that's maybe the nuance in there. But yeah, I take your point. If he's not in there, I would now worry that some of those players, get a bit shook if Calmac isn't there. And that's not ideal. I think KT will sort that sort of problem, because I think that's a leadership thing and a Celtic sort of thing.
Yeah, and there's a couple of comments in the a couple of guys in the comments, or girls in the comments potentially, making that point. Oh, I've just picked the wrong one. Excuse me. Sorry, CCV, never in the ref seer, never a captain. Yeah, look, he's a captain. He's a kind of captain that leads by performance example. But yeah, in a derby like that, you need somebody that's at it, and he's such a calm persona, and we need that at the back. But you also want a big personality, an aggressive, challenging personality, both the opposition.
Is that not AJ?
AJ's got it, absolutely. He could do it. And he has done, when CCV and McGregor haven't been around. Obviously, keepers have taken it up in the past. Michael could do it, but obviously you're not right in the middle of the pitch, and Hart's done it in the past as well. But yeah, I think Ian's absolutely spot on. Kieran Tierney will I think he'll walk in the dressing room and he'll immediately be the vice captain, and players will obviously respect him based on what he's done, where he's been, and his previous legacy at the club. So, more leaders in the dressing room, never a bad thing. But yeah, you're a bit disappointed in players like CCV, like Jeffrey Schlupp. These guys have, Schlupp's been there and done it all, and he had probably had his worst game in a Celtic shirt in that game when you want him to possibly have his best. So we'll do real quick predictions. Actually, we'll wait predictions. We'll briefly laugh at the opposition who beat us 3-2 a couple of weeks ago, just in terms of the latest part of the circus. They've had some strongly worded statements for the first time ever against their own. The backlash online in the comment sections of those has been absolutely as you would expect. The locals are revolting in more ways than one, and the odd lone voice seems to be going, "Oh, what about the investors?" It seems like they're scaring them off as it goes, and then they've got this other issue with another litigation, I think, as well. So the problems are piling up.
I think that strong statement, and I'm pretty sure Ian doesn't agree with this, it's all about UEFA. I think the alarm bells would have been going off. Both Celtic and Rangers have been warned about flares. They've been warned about the fans, and then their fans come out with that insane banner, and they were very lucky not to have an empty stadium for their next game. How many second chances have teams had now? And I think UEFA have obviously been saying quietly, get ready, it's coming. You're not going to play with your fans.
So I think there's an element of that. But I would say with the takeover of the 76ers, I don't know if anyone saw the 76ers put out like a happy St. Patrick's Day, and en masse, all the mutants were on it. Like, you can't underestimate how big jeopardy that is to and it's finance. There's loads of investors in that board in Rangers, and they're looking to sell that club, and that is ultimately what's taking precedent now. And if you're doing the takeover, people will know you do due diligence on everything. I mean, I've been in companies where, like, appointments at senior levels, they've gone deep into like their social media, things they've done for like years beyond. So it's not going to be lost to that takeover panel. There's a large element of that support that are, insert your own word, and I think toxic. Yeah, utterly toxic.
Utterly toxic, and that's been kind.
Yeah, and that is being kind. And I think the board will be thinking, hold on, we're at the finishing line here to be able to sell this club. And we've got what you would probably say is the most vocal element of that support, which is toxic, putting it in serious jeopardy. Because if you're looking to take over, especially if you're American, you want to cash in and absolutely every opportunity going. And if you've got a section of your support that are just going to oppose everything that that decent people do, that your opposition do and stuff like that, I think that's a real liability to your investment, and will have a real difficulty attracting fans out with Scotland, which they will obviously want to do. I think the UEFA thing, yes, because maybe it could be tied to the stadium closure and the ticket money, but I think it will be that takeover, because that'll be putting the due diligence under, like, the people who are doing that will be a bit shaky with some of the stuff they've seen.
Absolutely. Look, we're nearly out of time, guys. I'm going to real quickly just ask for your prediction score for the Hearts game, and then we'll get out of here. Thanks to everybody in the comments. Not really done the sell. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so. We're only into our second season. We are a small little channel that's trying to punch above our weight.
Not any more top journalists on, Paul. We've got
one fake top journalist. Yeah, so please, if you can, like the episode, hit the subscribe button. We'd love you to do that. David, score prediction.
Yeah, I've learnt my lesson. I'm not going to be too optimistic anymore. 5-0.
5-0. Good man. Greg?
I'll go 2.
2. Ian?
2 or 3-1.
Good man. I'm going to go 2-0 and leave it at that. Thanks to everyone in the comments. Sorry we couldn't get more of them up. We really appreciate you guys being in there. We'll be back on Monday to review the game. And we're going to be back into, match reviews and the usual nonsense. Don't know how long Gav's away for. He's away for a while. He's off in Europe. At the crunch time in the season, he's just wandered off and abandoned us. So you've got us idiots. You've got
on that, if everyone can en masse try and like and subscribe and just get as many people to do it as possible, like friends and family, then we can hold it over.
We can claim the glory while he's away. Spot on, Ian. Only a top journalist could come up with that. We'll leave it there. Gents, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. We'll catch up with you all soon. Thanks to everybody in the comments. We'll see you on Monday. Take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys.